Hey guys, welcome to the Kane Audio vlog. It's Friday, so that means it's Ask Me Anything time. And I'm going to dive straight in as usual. I think pretty sure everyone knows the drill by now. Right, thanks for answering my question. Also, that's a lot of coffee. Yeah, I drink a lot of coffee. I am a coffee fiend. But hey, beats cocaine. I don't know. Thanks for answering my question, Dom. This is Stanky Leg. Also, what country are you from? I'm from Wales. I live in Cardiff for the time being. So yeah, UK, British. Is it not obvious by the fact that I have a really posh English accent? I'm not posh though, I just speak well. Nightquaker. Hey Dom, thank you a whole lot for answering the mixing question, that's really helpful. I suppose the advice about compressor applies to parallel compressors as well. When they're used for rock and metal drums, for example, also if it's not too much of a secret, what companies have you worked with so far? Right, the first bit, compressor, I can't remember what I said, probably about the lack of compressors or using them. Or it may be about the fact that I think I said at one point, if you're using compressors, you've probably done something wrong. So yeah, I should probably clarify that that last statement absolutely only applies to electronic music, because the whole point of compressors existing is to kind of make something louder or quieter, or to attenuate the gain of something, to attenuate the volume. So when you're talking about rock or metal drums, then sure, use compressors on something like that because it's an acoustic instrument. When that drummer hits that snare drum, it's going to be a different volume or gain on almost every hit. So if you're, if there's the odd snare hit that comes out super loud, or if they do a rim shot by accident, I'd probably re-record that. But for example, a rim shot will come out at a fair few decibels louder. So yeah, stuff like that, or an acoustic recording, compressors are great for things like that. In fact, somebody in an earlier video asked something along the lines of what exactly are compressors or something. Well, the answer to that is, they were invented for radio transmission signals, because it's when you're transmitting signals by radio, it's very difficult to keep the data whole when it's low volume. So for example, if there was a classical recording and the whole orchestra is playing, and then there's one quiet moment for say a minute, with just a solo violin, and then back into full brass orchestra again, you need to kind of average out those volumes. That's fine if you're in a theatre, if you're in a hall, you're there with the orchestra, then you can differentiate the loud bits, the quiet bits, and that's all part of the journey of that piece of music. However, if you're transmitting that via FM or AM broadcast, then you kind of need to find a happy medium, because if somebody was driving in a car and they had the radio playing that exact piece, then at the quiet bit they wouldn't be able to hear it over the sound of the engine in their car. So that's kind of one of the fundamental uses of compression. Then obviously the birth of vinyl and things like that, then you'd start using compressors to stop anything clipping, so it became more limiters, but also you'd have a compressor, and then the whole loudness war came in because people wanted things louder, and how loud can you take a piece of vinyl, for example. And this is why some people wrongly think vinyl is better, or music was better when it was on vinyl. it's not the vinyl format that was better, because vinyl as a format, any engineer will tell you vinyl was terrible. Still is terrible. It's the worst invention ever. If you want a good sounding format, I would go with tape. That would be, yeah, good old couple of inch tape, because the saturation on that sounded great because of the third order harmonics. That's a whole other story. So yeah, so that's really where compressors sort of gained ground, and then so we've had compressors and the whole loudness war, and if you don't know what the loudness war is, Google it, because I'm not going to explain it. But that's disappearing now with the likes of Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music. They're all introducing their own gain reduction systems, so if you compress the shit out of something that makes it sound super loud, then those platforms will actually just drop the volume so that everything sounds a decent level, so yours won't be competing with anyone else's. So as part of that, I guess I've not really used compressors that much. When it comes to parallel compressors, I mean, that's just extra compression, the old New York compression system. So yeah, like I say, I mean, that's fine for if you're recording acoustic instruments, if you've got you know, like you said, rock or metal drums, fine, yeah, you use compressors for that, because you want that sort of pumping sound anyway. And again, I did say with electronic music, if you're going for that really pumping sort of synthwave vibe, then yeah, go nuts on compressors. You know, I've got the Elisa's 3630s back there that were sort of famously used on Daft Punk's Homework album, which I think, if I remember rightly, they claimed they couldn't have done the album without the 3630s, and because the whole album is just ridiculously pumping and loud. So that's great if that's the sound you're going for. You know, it can be a creative choice, but so many people just chuck compressors on everything and they don't really know whether they should be or not. So yeah, bringing it right back to the original piece of last week where I was talking about I don't use compressors, I kind of recommend not to bother, you know, because you should, especially in electronic music, if you're not going for that pumping whatever, then you should really be able to make your drums sit well together without the need of a compressor. You know, an 808 kick drum sample is not any louder one kick to the next or any quieter from one kick to the next, so why would you need to compress it, unless you're going for the pumping thing. So yeah, hopefully that answers it. Also, if it's not much of a secret, what companies have you worked with so far? Loads. I mean, all sorts, from Moog to Universal to FXpansion to Loopmasters to you name it, basically. I think you can probably find a few more examples if you go to my studio website, which is kaneaudio.com. Otherwise, I suppose Google's probably your friend, but yeah, it's not a secret. I just can't even remember half of them. Andy Ruiz again. Hey Dom, why did you choose to remix Black Gummy's Alarm for the Mau5trap 10-year anniversary? The original and your remix are awesome, but I just want to know why you chose that one. Also, how did you... Right, I'll answer that bit first. So yeah, the Mau5trap 10-year anniversary thing. We all got sent essentially a spreadsheet of all the Mau5trap releases, and the guys at Mau5trap said, pick one. What do you want to do? And so we all kind of fought over each other as to which ones we wanted to do. My first choice was Black Gummy's Alarm. I loved the original, and kind of I mean, essentially I look for certain things when I'm doing any remix, and by the way, I am always open to doing remixes, but I am quite fussy on what I remix, which is why you'll notice I get quite a lot of remix requests each year, but I don't release very many remixes, and part of the reason for that is because I feel I need to be able to add to the package musically I feel like I need to listen to the original. First of all, I need to like the original. Second of all, I need to hear something in the original that I can play on. That could be maybe just the sound design of one of the synths. That could be maybe the melody. It could be one of the effects or something. There needs to be an element in that track that makes my ears go, oh, I can do something with that. I need to sort of get that bit of inspiration, and because you'll notice with all the remixes I do, and probably almost every remix I've ever done, I will change the melody a little bit. I might tweak the chord progression or the top line. I might add in a top line where there isn't one, and I will change pretty much everything while sort of paying homage to the original. So yeah, so for that reason I kind of felt there needs to be something, and that was no different with Black Gummy's Alarm. I listened to a whole bunch of the tracks on the spreadsheet that we were given, and Alarm, I can't even remember what there was. There was a couple of sounds. I think it was the Alarm sound that he named it in the stems. I think it was that sound that kept triggering, and it kept me thinking there's something I can do with that on top of re-instrumenting the main breakdown. And I thought the Black Gummy original version wasn't quite right to fit in my DJ sets, whereas if I did my own version, that would sort of make it more my thing using my instruments. So yeah, there's no secret really. That's kind of what I look for in any remix. Please get nitty gritty about the details, because even though my tiny mind will not understand a lot at first, I will study to learn it. Yeah, that's that. Like I say, I guess the biggest thing for me is music should tell a story of some sort, whether that's a secret story inside your head or a public story that's completely on the nose. But I think every piece of music should tell some sort of a story, even if it's just a club banger. It needs to provoke some sort of reaction. And yeah, so that's what I'm kind of looking for, is can I make my own narrative using something from the original version of whatever track it is. Skudmend, have you done much work designing with physical modelling synthesis? If so, have you found any tricks? Hell no tricks. Physical modelling is kind of a nightmare. I did study it in my engineering degree, and I loved it, but also hated it, which I think is probably the truth of physical modelling. I think anyone who does it loves it as much as they hate it. So no, I haven't found any tricks, and I don't do much work with physical modelling. I think that's probably a bit out of my field these days. Not saying I wouldn't, but I don't think the right project has come along, because I mean it's a hell of a lot of work. So for anyone who doesn't know, physical modelling is designing sound by applying the mathematics and physics behind something. So for example, if you wanted to recreate the sound of a snare drum, you would measure the dimensions of the snare drum, the density and mass of the material, the density and mass of the skin, the tightness of the skin, the pressure, the force of the stick, the material of the stick, the size and dimensions of the room that the snare drum is in, the height, the location. You'd put in all these numbers. You can plug it all in depending on what software you're using, but if you're using something like MATLAB, which is mathematical CAD stuff, yeah, so you can sort of implement all the sounds and eventually come out with a WAV file that sounds like a snare drum in a room. And then you could, if you wanted, change the size of the room or the size of the stick or the size of the snare drum or the density or the weight or the mass or whatever, and you can alter the sound based on these things. There are a few people who have tried making plugins that do physical modelling, none of which I've really kind of got to grasp with, to be honest. I think when I was doing my degree, physical modelling was like this outrageous thing that needed massive graphics cards and whatever to do anything in vaguely real time. The processing was huge. Nowadays, thinking about it, you could probably churn it out in real time pretty quickly. So I would imagine it's come on leaps and bounds since I last looked, but I haven't looked. So there we go. Deadly Custard, hey Dom, it sounds to me like your track Vabba in 2015 marks the beginning of your sound as we hear it today. Do you feel the same? Yes, I do. Was it Vabba? There was 3 or 4 I put on Wartone around that time, probably 2015 if you say. I think I wrote them around late 2014, early 2015. Yeah, and they were definitely the beginning of what I suppose is my sound as you hear it today. If so, was there a catalyst for this or a moment of Dom Kane enlightenment? Do you know what? There was. So rewind 3 or 4 years before that, where would we have been? I can't remember the dates, but I'm sure you guys will know when this was. It was when dubstep had properly peaked and deep house was a new thing, and electro as we knew it became EDM, which was that whole distorted kick drum crap. Whatever period that was, I got so deflated with the whole industry because before that time I would have probably, I mean, I would have always called myself progressive house DJ and producer, and I was DJing a lot all over the world and enjoying it. And I always used to play progressive house that was kind of teetering on the edge of electro as it was back then. And I always liked a bit of a square wave bass line in there and a bit of a Bob's Your Uncle type, whatever. A bit of oomph. And there was just, in the space of a couple of months, all of this stuff with the distorted kick drums started happening. The first couple I heard, I thought, oh yeah, I like this is all right. And then I heard a third and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth and 100th and 200th, and you get to a point where you're just like, what is this? As a producer, I think most of the guys who subscribe to this channel, certainly guys who've followed me, from earlier days of social media and whatever, I think most people will agree I like being a producer for producing. I like to nerd out over stuff and try new techniques and do something, I don't know, a little bit different. And I just kind of felt like all of that deep house and EDM was just copy paste stuff. Get yourself a distorted kick drum, copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. Find yourself some detuned saw wave, ding ding digga digging, copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, and there you go. You got a track done. Well, that was never something I wanted to do. Why would I want to do that? That's not why we produce music. I don't play for the masses necessarily. I don't pander to the masses. If that's what they want, then they can have that, but that's not me. And at the same time, the whole sort of deep house thing was I keep using quote marks, by the way, because deep house is not deep. It's pop, which is fine, but it's not deep. And again, that was kind of the DX7 woodblock bass. I think it was called wood bass in the 90s. That bass line anyway, and it was just that all of 3 notes, copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, maybe get an a cappella of something, copy paste, copy paste, and again, it just completely uninspired. So yeah, I got pretty pissed off with the industry, and I kind of just didn't get any inspiration to write any music. I pretty much switched everything off for myself, carried on with my sound design work and obviously doing all of that. But yeah, industry wise, I just got pissed off. I got so pissed off. In fact, in one last ditched attempt at getting some gigs, I had a contact database of thousands of promoters and thought, right, let's just do one last attempt and then call it a day. And I did that one last attempt, and every single promoter from the UK, every single promoter from the UK came back saying, sorry, we only do deep house now. And I just thought, well, fuck that. I'm not playing deep house just because that's what everyone else does, because I don't enjoy it, I don't like it. You know, I hear the odd pop song that people call deep house, and sure, it's fine, but as a producer it doesn't interest me. So I kind of left it at that, and I don't think I opened any door for myself for about 18 months, 2 years, until one day I was playing with the Moogs and came across a sound that I'd made while doing some presets, and just sort of started playing with that and just kind of got excited. As part of me giving up or switching everything off, I unfollowed everyone on Twitter, on Facebook, on whatever else. I unsubscribed to all the music industry magazines and any sort of news stuff because I just didn't care. I just felt like we were in an industry where likes mattered more than quality, and that's not a game I want to play. So yeah, there were a bunch of super famous DJs at the top of their game commanding millions of dollars for basically hitting Control C, Control P, Control C, Control P, and that's not really an industry I want to be a part of. So it took me a couple of years to then finally sort of accidentally came up with a few sounds, and and then I sent them to my mate Sonny Wharton, who runs Mau5trap Records, and he loved them, and he was like, mate, this is exactly what the industry needs right now. And I was like, dude, you know, that's not what I was doing. I was just doing it for myself, but if you want them, then have them. So he signed them up and he released them, and they did pretty well, and one thing led to another. So I have a lot of respect and gratitude for Sonny Wharton for that. So if you haven't heard of him, go check him out now, because he's an amazing DJ, a great producer, and a lovely, lovely guy. That's kind of my granddad story of how my sound sort of got to where it is now. And I guess it just kind of evolved from there, really. What else have we got? We're coming up to 25 minutes, so I should hurry up, because my camera will cut out at 30 minutes apparently. Rod Marconi, hi Dom, thanks for the mention in your last video in relation to my question. Please keep up the great work. Your time and valuable advice is much appreciated. Cool. Erdnassi23, you have a couple of hardware Alesis compressors, 3630s question? Yeah. How do you use them? In fact, I mentioned them earlier on. I don't use them that much. It's really only if I want that sort of 90s pumping synthwave thing going on, which is very rare these days, but there is the odd track when I do mixing and mastering for other people. Sometimes they'll want their drums to really just pump, and I'll quite often dig them out for that. I should probably mention that I'm available for mix downs and mastering. I never advertise my own services, but I probably should. I'll do that another time. Next, then, the last one is GG11. Hi Sir Dom, can you do a tutorial on layering synths in techno? Also, can you give away as a download the Ableton files or stems of any of your old house tracks on Ministry of Sound? Those tracks were hard as fuck. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Right. Can I do a tutorial on layering synths in techno? I guess so. But I would suggest, if you haven't checked out my Sonic Academy tutorial, which is my latest one on structures, have a look at that, because I talk about layering synths in that, and that's probably a better example than what I could do for YouTube. But to add to that, kind of like when I talk about compressors, I also have a similar view on layering synths. Most of the synths I use are just one layer of sound, and I kind of feel like if you need 2 or 3 or 4, sometimes when I do a mixdown job for someone, they'll send me the track, and then their lead line or their chord phrase is like 20 different synths all playing the same thing in the same octave in the same similar sound, and I sort of look at it and go, whoa, why have you got 20 of the same thing? And it's because they haven't maybe quite understood that actually they wanted a bit of a sine wave under the saw wave or something, and it took them 20 attempts of layering stuff in before they finally found what they thought they wanted, but didn't realize that all they needed was maybe a sub sine wave or something underneath it. So it's not so much about layering synths, but more about, if you feel a synth sounds too weak or too fat or something, you need to investigate why that is and what makes it do that. And I guess that's probably the answer that you're looking for. Also, can you give away as a download Ableton file stems of any of your... No, unfortunately not. Anything that's signed to any label that isn't my own, I no longer own the copyright to. In fact, this Mau5trap competition that I've been doing took a lot of effort for me to get the stems for that, and that's a current track that's doing all right, and that's Mau5trap, and it took a lot of I mean, Mau5trap loved the idea and wanted to go ahead, but because of course you've got publishers, lawyers, record labels, tutorial companies, artists, everybody gets involved in the whole process, in what can be done, what can't be done, what is allowed and what isn't allowed. So yeah, unfortunately anything I've done that's signed to other labels is pretty much a no. Yeah, sorry about that. But I will do hopefully more in due course. Maybe what I can do is think about, when I start doing more tutorials on this channel, maybe giving away the Bitwig or Ableton files with that as examples and whatever. Yeah, no skin off my nose. So there we go. That is it for today. 28 minutes. Nice. Okay. Yeah, so thanks again. Please do like, comment, subscribe, get involved. Definitely comment, give me more questions, ask me anything, and I mean anything. Ask me my opinions on an artist, or my opinions on something in the industry, preferably music industry related, but it does say ask me anything. So yeah, get involved, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.